Well, it looks like the offseason rumor mill is definitely turning, and the Raptors are involved. What's up, everybody? It is JJ Buckets. Now, of course, we are here to talk basketball, and in what is, quite frankly, one of the most exciting times of the NBA season, which is ironically the NBA offseason. Obviously, free agency is set to kick off tonight, or at least the period where we start hearing, the breaking news about, free agents moving to other teams, whatnot, all that good stuff. And there's been at least a couple of rumors that have come out here about the Raptors. So before I jump into those, just obviously, as usual, make sure you're leaving a like on the video if you enjoy what you watch today. It takes like 1 second, it makes a huge difference for me. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. 70 away from 1K as of this morning. So that is super exciting for me. Be a part of the last 70 if you're new here too. Help me hit 1K. Other than that, let's hop into the rumors. Before I hop into these rumors, let's just remember that for the most part, the Raptors are not really a team that leaks things. And the Raptors are an organization that's fairly tight-knit and fairly closed-mouthed. So take any rumors that you hear with a pinch of salt, I believe the expression is, but we're still gonna talk about them. So the rumor is that the Raptors do still have interest in trading for a center or acquiring a center. And it looks like the two men at the forefront of that are DeAndre Ayden and Rudy Gobert. Now there's a little more, I'd say honestly there's a good ammunition for finding both relatively believable, and I'll talk about both. So with Rudy Gobert, obviously this is a man that we've heard in trade rumors for a little bit now, and the Raptors have been consistently linked, and at this point, the Raptors are the Vegas favorites to land Rudy Gobert. It's interesting, right? Now you're thinking, oh well, what does Vegas know about basketball? You'd be surprised, actually. I mean, Vegas odds and such like that are usually a fairly decent indicator for this kind of stuff. I will actually, even look back to the Kawhi trade and the Kawhi saga and remind you all that, when that was going on and the Raptors were quickly pushed in there, people were confused. It's like, wait, the Raptors? We haven't heard anything about Kawhi to the Raptors, and then all of a sudden Kawhi was on the Raptors. So even with stuff like that, with stuff even like betting odds for championships and stuff, I'm not saying Vegas is a perfect source, but by all means, Vegas tends to be fairly right about these things. So the Raptors are at the top of the list for Rudy Gobert destinations, and the other one here being DeAndre Ayden. The link there kind of is on top of obviously this rumor breaking out. You have Scottie Barnes and DeAndre Ayden, who share an agent, and Scottie Barnes recently posting on his IG story calling his agent the GOAT. So it's just one of those things where it gets you thinking, right? So I think there is some credibility to the fact that the Raptors do have interest in looking for a center and trading for a center, because in both these cases, in Gobert would be a trade. With DeAndre Ayden, it'll be a sign-in trade. It could be even a double sign-in trade, and I'll talk about that later. But it does look like there's credibility to the Raptors wanting a center, and this rumor at least having some truth to it. So with that being said, DeAndre Ayden or Rudy Gobert, who's the preference here, and who should the Raptors go after? So starting with Rudy Gobert, right? The appeal there, I think, is very understandable. I mean, he's one of the best rim protectors. I mean, he's probably the best rim protector in the NBA right now, and easily one of the best of all time. I know a lot of people don't like Rudy Gobert. That's not going to be a popular statement, but he's a fantastic player. And I know a lot of people love to talk about, him getting played off the court or whatever when it comes to the playoffs. Again, I was amongst that group for a fairly, I'd say, at least a decent amount of time way back when, but I really don't think that's the case in terms of what happens. Even just watching this year's playoffs, Rudy Gobert has lifted the Utah Jazz to being a top 5 defensive unit in his time of kind of, I guess, peak performance there in Utah consistently, and that's really impressive considering how bad the perimeter defenders are around him. So I think when you take Rudy Gobert and you put him in a situation like Toronto where, hey, the perimeter defenders are not bad. The perimeter defenders are not bad at all. It's a whole different story, right? So I definitely see the appeal. I think easily the Raptors are the best defense in the league next year if you add Rudy Gobert into the fold here. So I understand the appeal, and especially with guys like Siakam, Freddie, and Scotty Barnes that can play make. He doesn't have to worry about creating his own offense. He can just play as a lob threat. So offensively, you don't really worry about him being a negative too much, I think. So yeah, I get the appeal for Gobert, but there is also, I guess, naturally there's concerns that come with Gobert as well, right? So Rudy Gobert is 30 years old already, and he's on a massive contract. Neither of those two things I think are super appealing, in my opinion at least. The 30 years old thing in particular, like Rudy Gobert feels like a very win now move. And don't get me wrong, the Raptors are a lot closer to contending than they are to, rebuilding. But even still, it's an interesting, I guess, prospect or question of, do you really feel like the Raptors are that close to a title that you're ready to make this kind of win now move like this offseason? Where obviously Scotty Barnes has a super bright future ahead of him. Pascal's coming off an All-NBA season. Freddie's coming off an All-Star season. Then you have some other good pieces around. It's a little tough to discuss past there, I think, because you don't really know who's on the roster from there moving forward, because obviously you're giving up pieces in this trade. So there's a lot of pieces to like there, but does a Rudy Gobert trade catapult you over, teams like the Celtics that were just in the finals, teams like the Bucks that are going to be healthy next year and are also recently off a title? It's interesting. It's very interesting. Again, I see the appeal in the present for why Gobert makes a lot of sense in terms of what the Raptors need. But at the same time, it's interesting when you think about the timeline of the team. So there's a lot to think about in that one. Now, DeAndre Ayden is an interesting discussion as well, because I feel like you can make the argument that as of right now, from what you've seen to date, Rudy Gobert is the better player. But obviously, DeAndre Ayden is 23 years old. Fits a lot better, obviously, with the timeline for one. But he's also kind of been in this role with the Suns where it doesn't feel like he's gotten a chance to maximize, his gifts and what he can be in the league. So if you're a team, that's looking at DeAndre Ayden as a potential suitor, one of the things that comes to mind is just what can this guy can be, right? And I think that's the whole appeal of Ayden, really, is the upside. It's kind of one of those things where from what you've seen to date, you like what he is. He's a good player, but the real appeal with him is just the upside of what he can be, more so than, what he is now. Especially, obviously, if he's seeking a max or somewhere close to a max. From what we've seen to date, he's not a max level player. He's definitely, with all due respect, not a max level player. But can he turn into that? And there's a risk reward obviously associated with that, where if you want to pay DeAndre Ayden the max, you're really banking on improvement for him to be a max player. And that doesn't always work out. Again, respectfully, because man is just coming off an NBA title and he played a fantastic role in the Warriors, but when the Timberwolves threw Andrew Wiggins the max contract with anticipation that, he would be better and he would turn into a max level player, he never did. And again, that's not a knock on Wiggins. He's a very good pro. He's just not a max level pro. So if DeAndre Ayden wants the max, are you throwing him the max contract that he's looking for? That is a tough discussion. That's the thing. And I'm not going to even begin to have it because I'm not a general manager. And there's a lot of thought process that obviously goes into that for anybody associated with that. But yeah, just that is a tough discussion to have on whether or not Ayden's a max level player. Can you convince him to not take the max, or can you convince him to take, kind of a bridge deal with, you know, a little bit of a prove it, I guess, type of, sorry, the word's escaping me, but just like, can you talk him into taking a deal where he has to kind of prove it that he can be a max level player and then turn around and extend him once you're comfortable with a max contract if he does prove it, type of thing. Yeah, that's definitely a lot also of thought process that has to go into that. Obviously, when it comes to Ayden, there's a chance there again. The most easily linked name I think that goes into these discussions of what's going back in the sign and trade is probably OG Anunoby, but on the other hand there too, there is some potential to work a double sign and trade if you're, you know, looking at Thad Young potentially, or even Chris Boucher, somebody like that. So that could be an interesting route to take as well. And Masai Ujiri is one of the best in the game. You know, if there is a trick up his sleeve that he can do, that man will pull anything anything that will get him there. So, you know, there's a little bit of faith there, but, you know, if there is a way to keep everybody in this that's currently a starter as of last season and just add Ayden to the mix, do I think Masai can get it done? Yes. I wouldn't bank on it. I'd probably, again, assume that some piece from the starting lineup last year is probably gone in that sign and trade, which is, again, is another discussion you need to have, similar to Gobert. You know, is this guy that I'm getting worth giving up what I'm sending back to the other team? And on top of that, it feels like these rumors, to an extent, for both of these guys, feel a little oddly timed, I guess, considering you just took Koloko in the NBA draft. You know, it brings up discussion of how long do you think it takes Koloko to be a serviceable rotational player, because, you know, he is on the older side when it comes to draft prospects, so you would kind of anticipate that he'd be in the rotation sooner rather than later, and I'd say his game is fairly NBA ready. So the timing of this is really interesting, and the fact that the Raptors are still linked to these guys is really interesting, especially when you also have the Magic letting Mo Bamba become an unrestricted free agent, so that's another option to consider for the Raptors. There's a lot going on here. So before the thoughts really start pouring out in every direction, I think this is more or less when I'm gonna, cut the video. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below if you had a preference between DeAndre Ayden and Rudy Gobert. Who would you rather have on this team, and what are you willing to realistically give up to get these guys on the team? Drop it all in the comment section. This is obviously very interesting, and I'm sure we'll have more news, as these days go along. Maybe the Raptors make a blockbuster, maybe they don't. Again, at the end of the day, only people within the Raptors organization really know what's going on with the Raptors organization. That's been me for the day. It's been JJ Buckets. I will reiterate what I said at the beginning of the video. Like it takes a second, and it makes a huge difference for me. And if you're new here and you liked what you watched today and you want to see more in the future, subscribe. The off season is a great time for content, and it's a really fun time for me to be making it, so you'll have plenty of content to watch. Yeah, JJ Buckets, once again, it's been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.